Hello, everyone, and joining us. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Leadership for the Now. My name is Florian Lungo, and I'm so delighted to be with you today, together with my teaching partner, Alena Ipanova. Welcome, Alena.
Hi, Florin. Thank you so much. Happy to be here with you. And today we are gonna cover a very important topic and quite intangible topic, I would say, which is resilience.
Yeah.
So I would suggest actually to jump straight into the topic, and I'm curious to hear from you, Florin. What, how do you define resilience, and why do you think it's so important to develop for leaders and teams?
Yeah, thank you so much for opening the conversation. In my experience, resilience is actually, as you say, one of those intangible things, one of those things that we don't put on our CVs, or not something that maybe when we recruit someone we don't look for resilience. That's not the first thing we look after, but it's so essential in today's world. Think about all the challenges that we have to go through. Like COVID was something that most of us didn't expect it, probably very few could foresee that, but yet we came out of that more resilient. Now we know how to deal with the global pandemic. So what I'm saying is that it's not if we're going to get setbacks, failures, or challenges, is when we're going to meet with those, are we able to bounce back, right? For me, resilience actually means going from failure through failure to failure to failure without losing our enthusiasm. If we're able to do that, means that we are resilient and we bounce back and we're able to take a lot in and just move forward. What
Mhm.
about you? What's your view on resilience?
When I think about resilience, generally, I get this link in my head to Brene Brown, and she speaks a lot about vulnerability. So for me, there are several components to resilience, and I share your perspective on that, that this is our ability to bounce back when we face challenges. And I would add here, it's also about catching ourselves in our thought traps or thinking traps when we actually tend to go to kind of sink down and say, okay, it's so bad, I can't do anything about it. Or, okay, I have to push through or something. So it's a lot about self awareness together with being vulnerable and seeing it as a strength, but also being aware when you need to take a break, and how you actually want to move forward. What are you focusing on things that didn't work, or on what you can actually learn from it, and how you can move forward. So I'm very solidar with your point of view here, that it's all about how we move forward. So this should be the focus. And Florin, when we put it in the dimension of leadership, why is it important for leader to develop resilience? And maybe you can share some examples and some ways in which we can actually do it as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe as leader, first of all, you have the responsibility of the team, right? So you're not only responsible for yourself, for your result, for your well-being, but you're responsible also for the team results, their well-being as well. So then it places some responsibility on you. The stakes are higher. So as leaders, this actually talks a lot about our view and reaction to failure and setbacks. How do you react when someone on your team, for example, fails at something, or they fail to deliver something? Your role as a leader then become much more important in fostering that kind of resilience in people. I shared this example of my 1-year-old son Adam that started taking his first steps, and the way that we nurture him, like he would fall down, but we're not gonna you know criticize him for not knowing how to walk, right? We're just gonna encourage him to actually get back. We try to protect him from getting hurt, but we try to encourage him to get back and to give it another try. So I think this is a perfect example of how we can actually, as leaders, create an environment that actually foster, growth, and that builds resilience by our approach to failure, like, encouraging failure, making sure that we learn from failure, making sure that we don't make the same mistake twice, because that's when we kind of lose faith. If we continue failing but we're making the same mistake, then we lose faith, and when we start kind of losing confidence. So as a leader, you have to be your cheering up your team, helping them navigate failure. But also, I think one of the aspects that a leader definitely should do is to be able to help people see the higher perspective. Like, one of the principles that I love from history and from, the ancient Greek philosopher is the ability to actually see things, from they call it a cosmic perspective. So in other words, like, it might sound to you, as you just mentioned, oh, this is the end of the world, right? This failure is going to break us, it's not going to be able to pass through. And so then, if you take a higher perspective, say, okay, so this is one failure out of, I don't know how much or how many projects we tried. So okay, so it's not that big. Then you look at the entire organization. Like, okay, so we fail here in this project, right? Not the entire organization. It's not gonna. We're not gonna go bankrupt. And so then you look even wider at the economy and then the country. And so you zoom out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gives you then a perspective to see, oh, things are not as bad as they look. Like, when we are in the moment of that setback or failure, it sounds, or it feels really, really terrible, really bad. But if we're able to look back, take a step back and look from above, then we're able to see different. And that's the leader. The leader has this perfect perspective as well. So I think the leader plays a really critical role in the resilience of teams. And what do you think? What's
Mm-hmm.
your experience?
Thank you for sharing, Florin. I want to build up a little bit on what you shared, actually, because you spoke about this ability to zoom out, which I personally like a lot. That was something that I want to take for myself out of this conversation, just to put word on that. But then also, as we speak about leaders and their crucial roles in cheering the team up, keeping up this enthusiastic spirit, and encouraging them to go and try different ways. As much as we do that, we also need to be very much self-aware about our own state and our own core. How unshakable are we? And you touched upon something important in terms of setbacks and growth mindset. I would suggest everyone to do a short practice and ask yourself a question. When something bad happens, or something that I consider like, oh, this is a failure, when something like this happens, how do you feel? What kind of internal conversation do you have? Um, what are your thoughts? Are they negative thoughts, or are there something, the thoughts that are focusing more on the future, like, okay, now what can we do to move forward? Actually, we got this situation, it's a fact. What do we do? Or if failure happens um, in a team, do you blame someone? Do you have these thoughts? Or do you lift up people? Do you really have this support system? And in terms of relationships and networks, I think it's playing a crucial role. So when we talk about individual resilience, for example, then we can also expand it to collective resilience. How supported do I feel if something happens? If I work in IT and I have a bug in a system and I know about that at 11 p.m., will my team come to help me? Because I can't manage alone. So I think if you answer these questions, you will get a little bit of reality check on the state of your individual resilience and also like collective state, which might guide you forward. Like, okay, what can we do uh, if we need to do something to improve the situation?
Yeah,
So these are
absolutely.
the thoughts that I have.
Yeah, that's so good, and I think you touch on just the practice of being aware, right, of how do we react, how do I feel. In my experience, there is at least three components to resilience, and one of them is self-awareness, right, being aware of
Mm,
our strengths and challenges and shortcomings, right. Then it's emotional intelligence, to be able to read our emotion, I mean, to be able to be in tune in with the way we feel in certain situations, but also to read the room and to read the team when we see that someone is down, and to be able to help them. And the third would be stress management, right. As leaders, we handle a great matter of stress, right. A good amount of stress. And so how do we manage that stress? How do we not allow that stress to actually lead us into exhaustion or burnout? And I think one of the biggest challenges for leaders is vulnerability, is to be able to say,
mm,
hey, I really feel tired this week, or you know I don't feel at my best right now. And maybe, and I know this is affecting my team, and this is affecting my results, and this is affecting my output. So I don't take a shot when I'm not at my best, right? If I don't want, and that's also knowing. I think, again, this comes with experience, knowing what fights to take and what not to take. How do you manage your energy and your resources? Like, do you really need to be involved in everything? And so I think that's something that comes challenging for leader. It's acknowledging that sometimes we also need help, and then sometimes we don't have energy left in our batteries, and we need the break, and because it could be seen as a sign of weakness by admitting that, right.
mm.
So it's challenging for leader to say and do that.
Yeah, yeah. Or it can be a sign of weakness from our perspective, but actually, from the perspective of our surrounding, it might not look this way. So very often we are so locked in our own thinking that we don't address these things. So here, I truly think vulnerability is the key. It's a strength, and having this supportive network and creating relationships with colleagues at work as well, and asking for help can be a great support in a resilience journey. And Florin, I'm thinking more about the giving some examples, because I know that you have a great experience working in industry, and now you're on the other side, working as a coach, actually supporting leaders who might experience different challenges that you
Yeah.
faced yourself as well. Would you share any example of resilience from your work experience, or maybe from some of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the practices that I think helps building resilience is a scenario planning. So in other words, we have to take the time to plan for the worst case scenario, but expect the best, right? So always, this is kind of a mantra, a mindset: plan for the worst, but expect the best. So when we plan for the worst, then we're much more prepared for the situation where things do not go the way we plan them. So this is something. For example, there was two example I can give you how you can apply this practically. So we had a practice when I was in the engineering world, that we were actually scenario planning in case someone, for example, quit, right? So as a leader, I had, my manager challenged me to work these scenarios out. Like, what if this key person on the team leaves the team or starts working against me, right? Because maybe, for example, we have different views on a technical problem, or something happens. So, how would I be able to continue delivering the projects we have to deliver if the person is not on the team anymore? And what happens is that it made me think into scenarios, and I always had a backup plan. I always had at least an idea, like, this: if this happens, this is what we can do. um, and it helped a lot. I so many times see leaders that complain and say, well, I didn't see this coming, I didn't see this team member leaving. uh, while we know that there is a certain percentage of turnover, and we also know that people stay with you for a period of time, might be 2 years, 3 years, depending on your industry and your organization. So it's almost like naive to expect people to stay long when you know that there is a turnover, natural turnover. So this helps leader prepare for that, having this scenario, playing these scenarios. In the automotive industry, again, we do risk assessment. So when we do risk assessments on systems, we say, okay, what if this happens? What if the other things happens? So if you sit with your team and look at different scenarios, what if this goes well, what if this doesn't go well, what if this, on a car you have actually a requirement that if one sensor breaks, then that shouldn't lead with a walk home situation, meaning that you should be able to still drive the car to the workshop and then they will fix it, so you should not get stuck somewhere. So we play a lot of those kind of scenarios, and then I kind of now apply this in when I coach leaders, and they, they sometimes they have worries about situations, sometimes they have, they are afraid to take a step or to do something. What if this person, I give them the responsibility, I delegate this to them and they fail, right? So we try to mitigate the risk, and by doing that, we're much more prepared for the situation when things go wrong, and then there is not so shocking for us, that failure, and the impact that it has on us, it's smaller because we are prepared and we kind of expect it to happen to some extent. We hope not to, but we're ready when it happens. So for me, that's one of the practices that leaders practically can do to develop that kind of resilience, and sitting with their team and planning this, um, through team activities and exercises, right? What do we do when we have a project that we should deliver at this date for a client and we're not able to? Well, what do we do? How do we handle that situation so it's not so stressful for everyone involved when it happens? Because we have a backup plan. And I'm gonna end with this. A really good example I read in a book by my mentor John Maxwell. He shared that he was on a private plane and he was going to land on an airport. And what happened is that there was some wind gust that kind of just the plane almost touched the ground, but then went straight up. So he was relieved, and then they gave another try. They land the plane, and he was then talking to the pilot, saying, how did you react so quickly and took it back up in the air? He said, well, I rehearsed this, 60,000 times. Every time in the training, I knew exactly what happened. If this is going to happen, this is what we do. It was in my program, in my mind, right? I didn't have to think about it, right? So they were scenario planning in the training and in the experience they had. So it just came natural. So I think that's what we could do, is to prepare for failure and for setbacks. The more prepared we are, the easier it would be for us to navigate those.
Yeah, and still keeping the positive outlook, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is a good, this story is a wonderful wrap up of our today's conversation on resilience. And I hope that our listeners got some practical tips as well, and encouragement to look deeper and reflect on your relationships with resilience and whether you need to work intentionally on that. So thank you
Yeah,
so much for all your examples, Florin. It's been inspiring listening to you today.
yeah. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope we try to make this shorter and sweeter. So I'll just add one last thing. Here is a quote by Rocky Balboa, who was played by Sylvester Stallone, say that where is not the he was a fighter. He said, this is, the question is not how hard you hit, but how hard you get hit and you still can keep going. So it's about how hard can we get hit and still going.
Yeah, thank you, Florin.
Thank you so much for today. It was lovely being
Take
with you.
care.
I hope you got some value, and see you next time. All right? Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.